Hello, everybody. I can't call this Keep Boone Healthy because it's not that, but very similar to that video series. Welcome into this hurricane disaster relief briefing here, hosted by the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce and a few of our local resource experts. I'm David Jackson, President and CEO of the Chamber, and we wanted to get a few folks that were aligned with some key business resource areas to just give our business community maybe some best practices to consider over the next 3 to 5 days as we see more of the federal relief beginning to get into the community. A FEMA office is being set up here right now. I know a lot of businesses are starting to kind of wonder what comes next. How much longer can I pay people? What should I do operationally? Those types of questions. So we are pleased to be joined today by Brady Combs of Combs Tennant, Carpenter, PC. We've got PJ Hennessey from Granite Insurance. And right over here, sharing some office space with us right now is Amanda White from First Horizon. So we're going to be able to talk some from the CPA perspective, the insurance perspective, and certainly the banking perspective about what businesses can maybe start to organize or begin to think in terms of thought process here about what comes here in the next several days as we get into early next week. So Brady, as I said, I'm going to start with you and let you just kind of update us on some things from the accounting world, maybe some guidance that you're seeing in your area and any advice that you have for people in small businesses that may be trying to make heads or tails of their financial picture right now.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts. I think what's difficult in these situations, there are many things that are difficult in these situations, but as you consider the needs of a small business, the definition of what that is, I think, is something that we're experiencing a lot of different needs from across the community. If you're an employer of 100 plus employees, is a very different approach than maybe if you're a 3-person team or 10 person or less. One of the things that I think a lot of people are mindful of right now, I think David indicated right there, is paying your folks, especially if you don't have access to resources like internet or certainly power and things of that nature. With payroll, if certainly as a small business, if you have the means to pay your employees, there are ways that you can go in and file your payroll filings later based on payments that you've made. So, certainly any effort that you can go to support members of the community, your employees and their families through wages and plan to do that later with the filings as they're necessary. Those things can be done retroactively. There is some relief in the pipeline from the IRS standpoint. This happens to be the individual income tax extension deadline is October 15th. That, along with being third quarter filing deadline for payroll reports, those tax payments will be due typically October 31st. With the disaster declaration for the entire state, those have been extended through May 1st. So a lot of payroll related things, excise taxes, there's some relief for getting those reports filed. But as is typical in these situations, especially for, if you happen to be an income tax filer that's not actually filed your return yet, the extension is for time to file. It's not for the actual payment of your income taxes. So interest and things like that will continue to accrue. If you have the ability to pay those kinds of things, certainly it's always a good idea to go ahead and do that. It's not really what's on a lot of people's mind. They're more focused on getting resources out to their community members and employees. So we're fielding a lot of questions related to payroll and things of that nature. I'll also indicate that, much like a lot of folks ended up doing during COVID, there is the concept of the federal disaster declaration, access to unemployment, that if you decide to go the route as a small business to say, I can pay wages for a little bit, but I really need to consider my ability to do that long term, you may have conversations one-on-one with your employees and look at filing for unemployment for them with a temporary layoff with the idea that I'll bring you back on when I can. Those resources are there for this kind of situation, and the litmus test, the bar is lowered intentionally by the government so that employees can access that and employers can make use of those programs.
Thank you, Brady. And we've got a resource at boonechamber.com that lays out some of these, I'll call it business provisions or business resources that you can check out. And there's a link to the federal disaster employment relief that Brady was just speaking to. And I'm sure we'll talk about that maybe one more time before we get out of here. PJ, I'm going to pass it over to you on the insurance perspective. I know that one of the things that we've been talking about is making sure that people document as much as they possibly can, whether that's individuals or businesses. Can you kind of walk us through what an insurance company is looking at from a claims perspective? And then the most important question, I think, right now is how FEMA plays into all of this as part of that relationship.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so we are first and foremost front lines. Our office has shifted all priority to any claims, any of our clients that have claims. And from a individual and business perspective, if you have suffered damage, whether it is flood damage, and now is not the time to get in and question, do I have the right coverages, or, oh, I don't think I have the right coverage, so I'm not even going to bother filing a claim. So particularly on individual side is with FEMA disaster relief, you must have a coverage statement, either a denial of coverage of some sort, or, hey, this is what the insurance company has paid out to get those benefits, because FEMA will not duplicate what an insurance company has paid out. So that is very important in the process for individuals, and then for businesses as well. If there are certain circumstances where maybe they feel like they did not have the right coverages, we are recommending that everyone still file those claims to try to trigger coverage as much as possible within the detailed wordings of those policies, just so we can help out the folks as much as possible. Then obviously, hopefully, those who are impacted by flood have those policies and everything of that nature. But beyond that, yes. So the normal claims process, and is understanding some people it's not safe to do so, whatever the case may be, is documentation. You do want to reach out to your agent or the insurance carrier as soon as possible, and it's safe to do so, and just get in their list and their queue. A massive amount of resources from all over the country on the insurance side is being flowed into the region, but it is going to be a long process. There's no way around that. And then at that point, the main thing is, yes, you want to document, take photos, videos if possible, spreadsheets, just list out as much damaged property and itemize as much damaged property as possible. And then a big thing as well is, if it's possible, if it's safe to do so, preserve that property from further damage is something that insurance companies will expect. But obviously, under the circumstances, that can be very difficult for folks to do. So they, at this point, just more or less do the best you can. And on that note, two things that the Department of Insurance did come out with this week is the disaster declaration that is important for people to more longer term consider, is the notice of claims requirements that some insurance companies have, where some say you have to let us know within a certain number of days. The state of North Carolina has basically said, no, you cannot enforce that clause under the circumstances. So if someone is out of contact for the next several weeks before they can reach out to people and file that claim, you don't have to worry about that. And then there is also provisions in place that basically will allow for relief for insurance payments for those that have been affected by damage.
And I'll break my own rules here for a second to ask you an immediate follow-up, and that is about timing. We've heard from some FEMA resources that even getting your claims going to start to try to get work maybe done within a 6-month window, that will factor into how much FEMA will be able to reimburse. Is there any kind of guidance on that, or how quickly, once a claim is settled, people can? And I know it's going to be hard because there's going to be so much work to do. But is that something that you really need to immediately try to get scheduled once you get that claim settled and get the money in hand?
Yeah, it is a first come, first serve situation. So the first claims that come in are the first ones that's going to be put in the queue, put in the file, assigned to an adjuster, and on down the list. The further out you're going to get to that point, as well as getting access to actually assess the damage in the parts of the county that cannot be accessed right now. That's first, as much as it is for power companies, it's the same as insurance companies as well. So it's hard for me to say. It's heartbreaking for me to say, but patience is key in this situation for a lot of people.
magic of some TV here, of Switch Places with Amanda White from First Horizon. Amanda, if you want to kind of talk through some of the small business financial ramifications. Again, I know we've talked a lot about contact your local banker first. What is some of the advice that you're giving to your clients at this point in time?
Well, thank you, David. So, the local banking industry is here to help our community, especially our small business community. And while locally we have had some damage to some of the banking centers, the good news is there are restoration folks that have been working around the clock to get us back up and running. But remember, overall, the banking industry as a whole was not affected. So what that means is your ACHs are still going out, your direct deposits are still coming in. So you don't have to worry about a shutdown of your normal practices, because if they were up and running on Thursday, they're still going to be up and running today. But the biggest key, like David said, is to reach out to your banker. We are here to help. It's what we want to do. We have an amazing community of financial industry experts in the high country, and we just want to help. So reach out to us and we will direct you to resources that you need, such as deferring loan payments, whether that's consumer or commercial loan payments. There are processes in place to defer those loans as long as, probably up to 3 months, 2 to 3 months to help your cash flow.
Excellent. And then, from that perspective too, I think a big question that people have, and maybe I'll start with Amanda and go around the room on this, if any of you have any other thoughts on the timing with SBA. A number of businesses are filing FEMA claims, and they're wondering when SBA is going to come in and what that might look like with their bank relationship. What can any of you say about your relationship with the Small Business Administration, and maybe what you've seen in previous disaster situations, or maybe taking it back to COVID for a minute, but what can people expect to see in terms of timing and a reaction at a local level from that agency?
Yeah, we've already heard from our SBA folks, and there are links out there on our website, and I'm sure any website it's there. Go to the SBA administration and file what you need to file. It's probably a first come, first serve, just like in the insurance industry. So go ahead and do that now if you need it, but the resources are already set up and there.
Excellent. Any further follow up from either one of you? No, we're flying. The seat right now. So. Awesome.
Sure.
All right. So one of the other things that maybe stands to mention on the I can't remember which one of you talked about practicing a little bit of patience right now. It's been a while since we've seen something appear that has triggered some of these federal relief programs or even state relief programs. I can tell you all that there are conversations at both the state and federal level about aid packages, that are going to be taken through the individual state House chamber, state Senate chamber. Congress is already working on an aid package. We've had some conversation with Tom Tillis's office today about what they may be trying to seek and information they may be trying to gather. I would caution you to understand that that's going to be a while before that aid can not only be voted on, but then triggered into the system. From a federal and state resource, though, the FEMA contact, the SBA contact, how should people plan within their own individual situations to begin to think about that aid getting to them? So let's say we make that FEMA claim. Are they putting money in the bank quickly, or is this something that we're waiting for a check in a mailbox that may or may not exist anymore? So, can one of you maybe try to start to walk us down that process of expectations?
I might just add a few comments there. In terms of, disaster assistance, what we saw through the COVID years with, you may remember those PPP loans versus, SBA came out with their, or repurposed their economic injury disaster loans, which is what we're seeing currently, that if you're a small business and you reach out currently, as Amanda indicated, most likely you're going to end up in some kind of a loan arrangement. And my understanding is that for as they are being approved, those funds become pretty readily available versus these aid packages that might be approved at the state level. What we saw before was that they weren't duplicative, that often if you were qualified and in under one relief effort, that then it may or may not preclude you from another. So there may be a bit of nuance as to what you do, but I'll go to something that PJ said earlier, and documentation, I believe, is key, not just in pictures and photos of damage, but also in if you can demonstrate payments you're making, whether through repairs or like I was talking about earlier, to your employees and lost wages and lost revenues. That's what we saw with much of the grants that came through before, that a demonstrated quarter by quarter loss. Here's my quarter as it performed last year versus what we may be seeing for the fall quarter of 24, when we may lose a lot of tourism and industry. So I can't speak as much to the timing of payments, but just keeping in mind, I think is helpful, that if you go for SBA and economic injury disaster loans now, it's not to say that's not the right move. Those may come a little bit more quickly, but it may preclude you from future assistance in some of the state programs. Hard to know before it's gone through Congress.
Well, you bring up a lot of things that I remember from the PPP process, especially about what loan program you got access to and what grant program you got access to, and then all of that kind of thing. And I think you hit on a very important point, Brady. Right now, what we're seeing here, by and large, from government resources are low interest loan programs, the EIDL loan specifically. Haven't seen a whole lot yet of big picture grants or economic stimulus. It's not to say that won't come, but that is not in the pipeline to where I think that's a number of days or anything like that before something like that might come from the state or federal government. Again, I can say that from a political standpoint, it's being worked on, and I'll just say aid is being worked on. How that aid ends up coming down, remains to be seen. So, any final thoughts from you all before we shut this down? Any things that maybe are sitting on the tip of your tongue that you want to make sure we get to folks before we sign off this particular commentary? All right.
Lean on your community, lean on other business leaders. Like Amanda said, reach out to us. We're here. There are resources available, and for many of us that don't know how to build a road or do things like that, I would love to put my resources in an effort to help this community, as I'm sure a lot of local businesses are feeling. So We're here to help and support.
Yeah. I would not feel good about any road that I may help to build, but having to help in other ways for sure. One thing I want to make sure that we end on, and that's with the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So today you may have seen we made the first allocation out of that fund toward funding childcare, early childhood tuition payments for licensed care facilities in Watauga County, both traditional facilities and in-home facilities. We're able to make that tuition payment for the month of October. That's about $125,000 that we were able to get in to the Children's Council of Watauga County. They will step that funding out to the individual centers. The centers will contact the parents and let them know exactly how they want to administer that. But I set all that up to say we're ready for the next project, and we'll continue to fundraise for more business stability projects here in the high country. We talked with our board for quite a while this morning about other opportunities that exist out there, some of them smaller in scope, some of them larger, like a community project, like taking care of childcare, that are on the radar. We can do what we can do based on the funds that we have. And we've been fortunate that a lot of the donors that have been supporting these projects are people that have been tied to our community for a long, long time. They've either grown up vacationing here, maybe they're App State grads, and they're dreaming of coming back here soon to support us. And this is what they can do right now. So those of you that have folks in your network that are reaching out to say, hey, how can I help the business community? Let's make sure that that's business community support. That's not taking away from some of the other philanthropic efforts that are dealing with still loss of buildings, loss of life, loss of so many possessions and things like that we're dealing with as a community. What we're talking about is business community stability. And there's some people that want to give specifically to that. So if you'd like to point them in the direction of the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce Foundation, that's just boonechamber.com/foundation. And we'll be working to get another round of funds in so we can get those funds out the door as quickly as possible. But cannot thank the donors to that fund enough. Some of you in the community are really doing a great job of spurring additional investment. And we look forward to getting those resources, which to this point so far have been cash grant resources that we might be able to get out into the community to help in the short term there as well. So hopefully this child care infusion can not only help stabilize that particular industry and make sure that they are ready as people are starting to come back to work a little bit more, but also to take that financial burden away from families that need to spend that large sum of money on a monthly basis on something else. So hopefully we'll be able to get that moving in a good direction soon. So again, thank you all for listening. Thank you to our attendees here who have been so gracious to spend their very busy time with us. And again, continue to check boonechamber.com for further resources. Folks, thank you. Amanda, you can hang out here as long as you'd like to.
Thank you, David.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you again soon.